Okay, guys, this is an interview I did a few years back with Dewey Hardy, and this is one of my favorite things I've ever done because I knew Dewey. I went to church with him for years, and I also went to school with his son, Max Hardy, and a good friend of mine. And it's funny how you can be raised and with people, and you can go to church with them, and you don't really know them until you sit down and talk to them. And it was about an hour of talking. I've whittled it down for your viewing pleasure here, but touches on working in the coal mining business and being raised in southern West Virginia and then living in southwest Virginia. So I think you guys will really enjoy this. He really embodies a lot of the qualities and character of the men from that era to me. He's pretty matter of fact and stoic in some ways about things that other people, at least in this modern time, would shy away from. And I really loved, like I said, getting to know him on a better level and to find out what his story and where he came from. So I think you guys will really enjoy this one. So I'll get shut up and let you get to it.
Well, let's start. Just talk about where you were born and when. You were born
Yeah, I was born in McDowell County at a little place called Beach Fork, West Virginia. Old time place from long ago that the people kind of went back on the hill where there's a little water, settled, dug them out a garden, made them a fence, and had a cow and a horse, chickens and garden. And he lived, and his families would do that.
Now, what did your dad do for a living?
My dad, he worked at Amanada in the 30s, early 30s, and he was crippled by being a brakeman on a, in a coal cars where they had the coal cars and the tram, the motors to place them up. And he, one time he owned a little old store. Another time he drove a miner's bus. And he always had some little business going on, some kind of little wood, coal. Had a little pickup truck, and he pretty much made a living with a lot of that.
How many brothers and sisters did you have?
There was 6 of us all together. 3 girls and 3 boys.
They still living?
One sister just has passed in the last 2 months.
What was life like when you were little, as far as Christmas, that type of thing? Did y'all get a lot of presents, or how did that work?
What we got, we played with. We had fun with. The Christmas that my father died, I was about 13, 14, I guess, and strangely, there was people that brought gifts. It was right in early December, so like 13th, 15th, 16th, right in there. And there was people that brought food, clothes from Welch, just all over, and it somehow or another, there was always a little pride to rise up in you, and you, what was it bringing all this stuff in here for? But anyhow, it's just a lot of things happened. My mother had 6 children and left with a car and a truck. She used some of that to make some dollars, best she could.
How did y'all get by then after your father passed?
After father passed, I guess there was a little bit of welfare then, but not a great big bunch. But anyhow, my mother came from a family that was pretty much farm type people. She could do a garden, which not everybody can do. She knew about milking cows, and she knew about picking berries. She loved to pick berries. And there was always canned stuff, always berries and beans. Used to have pickle beans. You don't have them anymore.
Never heard of that.
And It was pretty tough, but you know, in that time, well, I went to the service, and at that time, the service they afforded an allotment for the families back home, and I was able to dip into that a little bit.
And what made you decide to get into the mine business?
That's all there was around here. I made a little bit better than average living, and I started out with a shovel and digging coal, you know, blowing it, blasting it with my, you know, going and getting the dynamite and the caps and drilling the holes and tamping it up with clay and try to load me 21 ton a day.
How much would you get paid for that?
Oh, I got paid 8 1/4 portal to portal, you know, to go inside.
What year would you have started, do you think?
I started in 52, maybe 53. But then a little school kind of opened up for me, and I took electric hydraulic school. And they grabbed me up right away and started me out training, working on equipment.
How did you feel when you first started mining? Was it kind of scary? I mean, you were playing blasting caps, you say, and all that stuff. That had to be.
Well, whatever you're working with, you don't seem to live with that fear. I mean, you know, you just automatically go and do it. You know what comes next, and it's hard work, and that's how you live, I guess.
Now, do you remember some of those explosions in those mines? Do you remember the Ammonite and Bishop?
Ammonite and Bishop. I remember something about Bishop more than Ammonite. I think it may have been in the fall. I'm not sure, but Bishop was in January. One of them was cold, disagreeable weather. People standing outside the shaft. You could smell the ventilation system would exhaust the air from the mine. You could smell the smoke. You know, you wait around all day, but you didn't actually get to see them bring the miners out. I think they would work and get them all together and bring them up.
What were the families doing during that time? Do you remember anybody waiting?
A lot of families would just kind of stand by and hopefully wait for a good word. And but pretty much a gathering around the mine shaft. They had a shaft there at Bishop up at Horsepen. And later I was working for the New River and Pocahontas Coal Company at the time, a Berwyn company. So I later got a job, was working at Berwyn, and the Consul bought Berwyn out, or Pocahontas Coal Consul. So I wound up holding on then. But I did work at Bishop in the places where the explosion was, but there's no evidence of it except the excessive rock dust. I mean, you know, they went to every extreme to minimize any more danger. But that was years later. But I worked at Berwyn. Then when Berwyn sold out, then I eventually made it to Bishop.
What's it like, even if you're working at a different mines, but after you hear of an explosion locally? I mean, that next day when you go in, what do you think about that? What's that like?
I never stopped to consider it. Mostly we worked at top of the hill coal mines, which was not considered gassy. There was non-gassy mines. Then the mines like Bishop was gassy mines. I never really gave it much thought, just, but, working around them in later years, I kind of learned a little bit more about what's taking place in that. But it was a little bit lax at the beginning, but these explosions seem like they have a tendency to happen in early spring. And they have these monitors in a lot of these coal mines this day and time to measure I can't get the word for it, but
Methane and
no, the not the methane, but the surface pressure.
oh, okay, yeah.
Pressure is what it is, but they call it something else.
Yeah. So I guess they continually work to make those mines safe, I guess, didn't they? They've tried to. Or how did you feel about the companies? I mean, did they, who did you work for in your career? You said you worked for Consol and some of those places? Or?
I worked for New River and Pocahontas, which was a good company. I worked for Consol, Pocahontas Coal Consol, that changed over somewhere in there. Never had no problem out of them. Never had any, don't have any bad memories of management. Never, of course, in my business, whenever I was working on equipment, well, I didn't look up to see much.
Yeah, that's one thing. I think people think that most people hated companies, and I'm sure there was a lot that did, but I keep running into people who said they were, for the most part, pretty fair.
I can't find any place where that they abused me in any way. They were more than fair to me, and in later years I got, when I worked as a daily person for wages, daily wages, where I got all the work I wanted. And then from there, when I began to be a maintenance foreman or the head in maintenance, you took on more responsibility and you did more labor. And that made you work harder to shoulder some responsibility.
What was it like? You started working in the early 50s?
Mm-hmm.
Then I guess they started... You saw,
Mechanizing then.
Yeah, what happened when they'd have layoffs? I mean, was that pretty hard on the community, or...?
Well, yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of horseshoe pitching going on. And there's a lot of wondering, are we going to get orders? Is the lake froze up? Do we have orders to ship it from Norfolk? There was a lot of that. If it's a strike, it was always anxious, wondering, how's it going to work out? And there was a lot of strikes. People get a little upset, and, and 2 or 3 could turn the tide and they could go home. 2 or 3 could turn the tide. But anyhow, I can't fault them. I don't know that we gained a whole lot by going home, but it's kind of normal that if 1 or 2 went, well, we were like sheep, we followed.
So you were in the UNWA? And
Yep, still in.
still in. Do they still have, do you get benefits from that still?
The benefits is diminishing at the end of, not for the union, but for the salary, that in December of 15, will be any more like insurance that we had for, or the benefits of medical.
Do you see any big difference between people that worked at union mines and ones that didn't? Is there a big difference in how they're treated or paid or anything?
Well, I've worked around both of them pretty much. The union, you know, they had their safety committees and can't knock that, and they had the mine committees that shouldered grievances, and there's always a grievance here and there. But I don't know. I know a lot of people. Buchanan won. Most everybody I worked with gravitated down into there. But I never seen anybody come out of there and got fired. So, you know, I think it must be a pretty good relationship down in there. If there's anybody got fired, I'd know about it. But
What strikes did you were you part of? You were still working when that '89 Pittston strike happened?
I was, but I was consul.
You weren't involved.
And if I was anywhere, I was a foreman, so they wouldn't let me go home either, so I had to stay and work. And sometimes that's when we would work on stuff to try to make it better, fix stuff. We still worked